Ultrawide monitors look amazing for gaming and can make productivity a breeze. But for us content creators, the trade-offs can be difficult to work with. If you've been thinking about getting yourself an ultrawide monitor, then stick around because today I'm going to show you the pros and the cons from the perspective of a gamer, a content creator, and an everyday user. That way, you can make the right decision for yourself. So, without further ado, let's get started. The ultrawide that I've been using for the last 2 months is the Alienware AW3425DWM. It's a 34-inch curved display running at 3440 by 1440, and it uses a VA panel. Now, if you're not familiar, VA panels usually give you deeper contrast and richer colors as opposed to the traditional IPS panels, though they're not quite as fast when it comes to handling motion. Now, this is my very first ultrawide, and I picked it up mainly for gaming and editing, but I also wanted to see how it would fit into streaming and content creation. And what I found is that it's incredible in some areas, but you do have to deal with some trade-offs depending on how you use it and how much of a perfectionist you are or aren't. So let's start with the good stuff, because there's a lot to love here, okay? When it comes to gaming, ultrawide just looks incredible. You get the extra field of view, which makes the worlds feel more expansive and the gameplay a whole lot more immersive. And I know those are marketing words, but that's just the best way I can describe it to you. I play a lot of single-player games, story-driven games, RPGs, action-adventure, etc. And having that extra field of view pulls me into the game way more than a standard 16:9 monitor ever could. Some of the recent games that I've been playing on ultrawide include Clear Obscure Expedition 33, Oblivion Remastered, God of War Ragnarök, and of course, Cyberpunk 2077. And all of them looked absolutely stunning. Playing on an ultrawide feels a lot like watching a movie in a theater compared to watching it at home. You get a lot more out of the experience visually as opposed to playing on a more traditional monitor. Outside of gaming, ultrawide has been fantastic for productivity and editing. In DaVinci Resolve, having a longer timeline has been a huge advantage because I can see way more of my project without having to constantly scroll back and forth across the timeline. I also love the fact that I don't have to crane my neck around the way I did with dual monitors, having to go from one side to the other, the entire time. Even when I split the screen for multitasking, for example, like editing on one half of the screen and watching a YouTube video on the other half, each window still feels plenty big enough to work comfortably with. Maybe I want to work on a script, watch a YouTube video, and create a thumbnail. I can do all of that on the same exact screen without ever feeling like the experience is cramped. I can't stress enough how great it's been to not have to move my head from one monitor to the next while multitasking. Over the last several years, it's become incredibly annoying to do so. I've tried numerous monitor layouts, the traditional side-by-side, the vertical stacked layout, and each one of them became a nuisance to work with when it comes to multitasking over a period of time. But so far, for me, using one monitor, my ultrawide, has completely removed that issue. Not to mention that having the one monitor has resulted in my setup looking way less cluttered and a heck of a lot cleaner. Now, as great as my experience has been so far with my first ultrawide monitor, there have been some trade-offs. The first trade-off is gaming support. While the games that I mentioned earlier had native support and looked amazing in ultrawide, not every game is built for this aspect ratio. In some cases, you run into stretched images or games that have black bars on the sides. More often than not, these issues are fixable thanks to the awesome modding community out there. And in my experience, most of the games I had to tweak were simple to work with thanks to Nexus mods. But there's always that small percentage that require a less user-friendly approach. And honestly, those games had me about ready to pull my hair out. Then there's console gaming. Consoles are designed specifically for 16:9 aspect ratios, so when you connect them to an ultrawide, you're stuck with one of two choices. You can stretch the image to fit the screen, which distorts it, or you can keep the proper ratio and deal with black bars on the sides. If you play a lot of console games besides gaming on your PC, it's absolutely something you need to think of. For me, when I use my PS5 Pro, I refuse to stretch the image because it looks absolutely awful when I've done so in my opinion, so I've come to terms with the black bars on the side. They're definitely noticeable at first, but after a while I just got used to them. And honestly, that feels like a small trade-off when I think about how incredible the full ultrawide experience has been when I'm playing on PC, on games that work, or games that have mods that work. And finally, for content creators and streamers, ultrawide brings its own unique set of challenges. It's not typical to upload content at ultrawide resolutions. Platforms like YouTube and Twitch are optimized for 16:9. That means that most of the time you'll have to crop your gameplay footage down. That part itself isn't too bad. I use DaVinci Resolve, and cropping it down to 16:9 is relatively quick and relatively easy, but where things get tricky is with the HUD, for example. Some games, like Clear Obscure Expedition 33, actually lets you adjust the HUD so it fits comfortably within the 16:9 portion of the screen. That means that when you crop, you don't lose any important information, hypothetically. Unfortunately, not every game gives you that same level of flexibility. When a HUD is spread across the full ultrawide screen, cropping means that you're going to inevitably cut out parts of it. Sometimes that's minor, and other times it can be more noticeable and more important information. For example, when I record Clear Obscure and crop it down, I lose the chat bubbles on the right side of the screen. Now, for me, that's not a deal breaker. The main combat HUD is still clear and visible, and the story still remains easy to follow during cutscenes. But if those chat bubbles are important to you and your audience, then this becomes a very real consideration. And this doesn't just apply to recorded content. If you're streaming, you'll run into the same exact challenge in OBS. You'll need to either crop your gameplay feed down to 16:9, which again cuts out parts of the screen, or you're going to have to stream in ultrawide, which leaves your viewers with black bars on the top and the bottom. Both options work, but neither is perfect, and it adds a layer of decision making every time you go live with what are you going to do with that negative space. At the end of the day, an ultrawide monitor isn't the right fit for everyone. That's just the truth. If you mostly game on consoles, the black bars might get old really fast because, again, stretching the image, it's an absolute no-no. For me, at least. If you're a content creator, the need to crop and adjust footage is something that you'll always have to manage. But for me, the trade-offs are absolutely worth it. The immersion in gaming, the productivity boost when editing or multitasking, and the overall experience make ultrawide a clear winner for me versus a standard 16:9 monitor. And as for the Alienware AW3425DWM specifically, being my very first ultrawide monitor, it's been a solid monitor. The colors look great, the brightness hasn't been an issue, and overall, I've had a great experience with it. But more importantly, I think ultrawide in general is something every PC gamer and creator should at least try. If immersion and productivity are priorities for you, I'd highly recommend you make the jump. If you're willing to deal with the trade-offs. If you're not willing to deal with the trade-offs, ultrawide is not for you. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the video and you found it informative. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Do me a favor, go ahead and hit that like button, drop a comment, and I'll see you on the next one. Be good to yourselves, be good to one another. Peace out.